Good morning friends, welcome to the point. In today's video we will discuss two very important topic related to inflation. First is demand pull inflation and next is cost pull inflation. Now in order to understand these two topics, you have to be very crystal clear about what inflation is and how it is caused. For that you can refer to my video that is made on inflation, and I would really request, if you're not clear with the concept, then first refer to the inflation video and then start up with this video. So we'll start with the demand pull inflation. I will not go through the definition which is provided here. I will first explain you the example and then automatically you will be able to understand as to what demand pull inflation is. So friends, as you all know that the country is suffering from a pandemic called COVID-19. Yeah, and if you would have noticed that all of a sudden in 2020 that the demand for sanitizers and masks all of a sudden increased. Yeah, so supply remained constant because nobody expected that there would be such a huge surge in the demand for sanitizers in the market. So a sanitizer which was earlier available for 50 rupees a bottle, due to increase in demand, there was shortage of supply, or the supply remaining constant and the demand all of a sudden increased. So earlier it was for 50 rupees. Because the demand increased, now the chemist started selling it for 70 rupees. Yeah, with the time the demand increased more because everybody wanted to use sanitizers while they were moving out. Now the chemist, what he did was, it increased the price for the sanitizer to 100 rupees. Why? Because the supply was a constraint. There was less supply of sanitizer and there are more people who were asking for sanitizers in the market. So with time, the bottle which was available for 50 rupees, now later it got for 70, and later the chemist increased its price for 100. Now if you see what is the pattern, that the price is increasing, which means inflation is there. The reason for inflation is that the demand has surpassed the supply. The demand is so much that we are not able to meet the supply of that product with the current production facility. And the reason for increase in demand could be, first, there is increase in the government expenditure. So if the government increases the expenditure, then there is more liquidity in the market. Or let's suppose if there's increased expenditure by the households and the firms, so there is more demand of the products in the economy and the supply is constant for in the short run. So for the short run period, what happens, that there is increase in the price of the goods, which leads to the inflation in the economy, and the reason is the demand or the increase in the aggregate demand in the economy, as I've explained through the example of sanitizers or mask or PPE kits. And then if you see in 2021, there was a huge increase in the price of oxygen cylinders. A cylinder of oxygen which was earlier available for say 5,000 rupees for 10 liters was available for 45,000, 50,000. And why it was happening? It was happening because there was huge or tremendous increase in the price and the supply was not up to the mark, or the supply was not able to match the demand of the product. Hence the inflation, and inflation backed by the increase in aggregate demand. Moving on to the next slide, which talks about the effects of demand pull inflation. The first one is shortage in supply. Obviously yes, because there is shortage in supply and the demand has increased, it is not able to match the level and it is causing inflation. The next effect is it increases the price of the goods. Yes, as I told you, in case of sanitizer from 50 to 70 to 100. And the last one is overall increase in the cost of living. So friends, whenever there is increase in the price of a certain set of goods and services in the economy, it is not that it is limited or restricted to those just basket of goods. It increases the overall cost of living in the economy. For an example, if I see that the price of sanitizer has increased and the mask and the PPE kits in the market, so definitely it causes increase in the transportation cost of these goods, because obviously when these goods are demanded in such a huge number, there is more need of transport services to supply these goods. Now when again if you see the supply of transport services is limited, demand is more, the same situation is over there also. So that causes a chain effect where increase in the price of certain goods and services leads to increase in the price of other goods and services or the associated goods and services as well. And this This leads to a chain reaction which leads in the overall increase in cost of living of people of a country. So these are the three major effects of demand pull inflation. Now moving on to the next slide about the cost push inflation. So before we start the cost push inflation, friends, I would like to reiterate one thing to you, that please just don't focus on mugging up these concepts. It would make your life really very easy if you relate these things to your day-to-day life, or try to connect with the examples that you happen to witness in your daily life. For example, as I gave you the example of sanitizer, we all witnessed that there was shortage of sanitizers in the market when the pandemic struck the country. There was increase in the price of the sanitizers. In 2021, the same happened with oxygen cylinders. There was shortage of remdesivir injections. The MRP of the injections were somewhere around 4,500 per injection, whereas it was available in the market for 25,000 per injection to 30,000 per injection. Why all this happened? This happened because there was so much increase in the demand of the product that the supply facility could not match it. So it led to the demand pull inflation. Now if you're clear with the example, you never, or you don't need to mug up the definition. You can always frame your own definition in the exam. So that is why I'm saying, please try to understand the examples and try to connect to day-to-day life. That would make your life much easier. Now starting with the cost push inflation. In the demand pull inflation, what was happening? The inflation was caused due to increase in the demand of goods. In case of cost push inflation, inflation is caused due to increase in the demand of increase in the cost of producing goods and services. So whenever we produce some goods and services, there are so many costs associated to it. There is labor cost, there is raw material, there is land cost, there is rent. So if any of it increases, it leads to the increase in the price of the final goods and services, and hence called cost push inflation. Now what are the cost of productions? So first is increase in the price of inputs, that is the raw material prices increases. Obviously it would have an impact on the final the price of final product and service. Then there is defective supply and chain. So whenever there is hindrance in the supply chain, that is the supply flow of any good, then it causes increase in the price. Then there is hoarding of commodity. Let's suppose there is a stockist of rice in the country. Okay, now there's a big time wholesaler or a stockist, and now the stockist assume that if I will hoard the stock of rice, so eventually what will happen? The demand, if remains stable, and supply, the person is cutting short. So now again a situation will arise where demand is more than the supply rest. Okay, now this supply is the supplier is what he is hoping for, increase in the price of the goods. Why? Because he is disrupting the supply chain, he is hoarding the goods with him. So what he is hoping for, let's suppose if there's 20 rupees per kg of rice, I will hoard the stock and let the price increase in the market to 30 rupees per kg, and then I will release the stock. Now, so what is happening? Due to hoarding of the goods by some people in the market, there is cost push inflation. Why? Because the cost would gradually increase and would lead to the cost push inflation. Last is the increase in the taxes on production. Now if government increases in the rate of taxes that is levied on the production activities, that would definitely have a bearing on the cost of final goods and services. So that is what is cost push inflation. Move to the last slide for the day, that is the graph explaining the cost push inflation. So on the x-axis we have price level, here's the GDP. So we have aggregate demand, that is downward sloping, and the aggregate supply and equilibrium is met over here. Now if we see in the cost push inflation, there is shortage of supply, or so the supply moves from AS1 to AS2 over here. Now a new equilibrium is formed over here between the aggregate demand and aggregate supply. Now if we connect the lines over here, now if we see at this equilibrium level, the price was this and the quantity demanded or the GDP was this. Okay, now if you see what is happening at this new equilibrium level, that is we'll refer it as E1, and the new one is E2 due to the change in circumstances. Now at the E2, if you see what is the price, so if you're seeing the price has increased to price 2, that is increase in the price. Now what does this increase in price denotes? It denotes the inflation in the economy. So that is what is cost push inflation, which is explained over here in the graph, that if you see the final effect, that the price has increased from price 1 to price 2, causing or leading to cost push inflation. So friends, we have covered the two types of inflation, that is demand pull and cost pull inflation. You really don't have to get it confused. Demand pull says the inflation due to increase in demand, and the cost push says the inflation caused due to increase in the cost of or the cost associated with the production of goods and services. And there is this graph also. I have provided you with ample number of examples for you to easily memorize everything, or to easily understand, I would say, everything. So friends, please just go through this video, because this was certainly a technical topic. So friends, this is all the today's video. I would please request you to revise this once again once it is ended. Thank you so much for your patience.